Hello, welcome to Guitar Tips. My name is Adam Levy. Each and every Friday I post a new video here, and it's just, bits of wit and wisdom having to do with the guitar. That's why it's called Guitar Tips. It's about the guitar, and they're just little tips. It's not a guitar lesson, but it's hopefully you can learn from the things that I share here. If you like what you see, please click on the subscribe button down below. And without further ado, here is this week's guitar tip. It is simply this: sound good at a reasonable volume. And by reasonable, I mean probably lower than you think. So, of course, every guitar player loves the thrill of, plugging in your Fender Bassman or Marshall stack or whatever, and just cranking it up. It sounds good. It feels good. You can get the excitement of just you hear it, but you're also just feeling the vibrations physically from that much volume. And of course it can bring out a lot of personality in the guitar. You get to hear all these overtones and all these detail. Everything is just really hyped up. And it's fun, but it's not particularly useful in a recording situation or in a live situation, especially a live situation where there's a PA, a sound system. So, if you're playing a big outdoor gig and there's no microphone on your amp and the only way for people to hear you is to crank it up, crank it up. No problem there. But if you're playing in a situation with a whole bunch of people on stage and everything's got mics and there's an engineer out there, usually that person is called the front of house engineer, or FOH. You might see it written that way. Anyway, their job is to blend everybody and make sure that all the stuff happening on stage actually sounds good together. So it's not just about having each thing sound outrageously big and loud and whatever, but actually having all the different sounds on stage working well together. And then they have, with all their faders on the board there, can balance all the sounds and then project it through the PA in a way that makes sense for whatever the venue is. If it's a small club or a theater or an arena or a stadium or whatever, that's their job. But if you're sending out so much volume from your amp that it's actually starting to fill out the venue, just even without the microphone sound, just the sound of your amp filling out the venue, that's not actually a desirable thing. That takes control away from the engineer, which really means they can't ever balance the sound in a way that they're trying to. And you have to take it on good faith that that's what they're trying to do. I know that engineers and musicians don't always seem to be on the same page, but really in a professional situation you have to take it on as a good faith thing that everybody's working to make the best sound for the audience. Okay, so with that attitude in mind, just turn down a little bit. Sometimes I'll even face my amp away from the front of the, not facing towards the audience, but facing towards the side. That way, at least some of the, if there's a lot of extra sound coming off the amp, it's not going out into the house as much. It's just sort of going off to the side. So the same is true in a recording studio. While it may be exciting to bring your favorite amp and just crank it up, that's going to be harder to capture and harder to balance in the final mix, and it may be bleeding into other microphones. That's not necessarily bad, but you want to be conscious that that's what you're doing. So one way you can achieve this in the studio or on stage is with a smaller amp. So I'm not saying that you should bring your Marshall stack and then just turn it all the way down to like half volume level, half of one volume level. It's not going to sound good, and it's just not a lot of fun. So I always advocate for smaller amps like a Fender Princeton Reverb or a Fender Deluxe, things of those size. One speaker, not a ton of wattage. Those kind of things can sound really great, once you put a mic on them and maybe a little compression and EQ. You send that out into the house mix, or you put that into a track for recording, and that's going to be really easy to work with. One challenge there is whatever size of the amp is, if the volume is low enough, it's just going to be super duper squeaky clean. And that takes away from the fun that I was talking about before. If what's fun for you is a Fender Bassman on 10, a Princeton on 2 is probably not going to deliver that to you, even if you have it coming back at you through the monitors or side fills or whatever. Or, in a studio situation, you can crank yourself up in the headphone box. So you'll need to have something that creates that kind of drive, overdriven tone and response in a box. So I'm going to share with you, this is my favorite pedal. It is a Boss OD3. I'm not sponsored by them. They didn't give me this. I bought it. It's well traveled. It's got some Velcro on the back so you can stick it to a pedal board. It's got little markers. You can see where my settings are. But you'll notice the drive is on minimum, 0. So I'm not really using this as overdrive so much as underdrive. The level is at 12 o'clock. And the tone is at 12 o'clock. Sometimes that changes. But the basic idea is when I step on that pedal, it really just, with my guitars and my amps, seems to be the thing that makes it just sound the same but louder. Some pedals will hype up certain frequencies. They'll add highs, they'll add mids, they'll add lows, or they may subtract any of those. And that, I'm not saying that's bad, or but it's just a matter of taste. I went to Guitar Center one day years ago, and I saw this huge pedal board of all Boss pedals. This was even really before I was thinking about using more kind of whatever boutique pedals, as they're called. This is back when really Boss was all I was thinking about. And I tried everything they make that's in the overdrive and distortion kind of family, and they make many things that will dirty up your guitar. And I found that for me, the way I touch the strings and the way that I like to hear sound, that the OD3 was actually the most neutral of any of the Boss pedals. And that's what I was looking for. I didn't want to lose any frequencies, and I didn't want to add any frequencies. I just wanted to have it sound like I'd reached over to my amp and just turned my amp up, but without actually turning my amp up and creating any of the kind of problems that I was talking about a minute ago. So I'm not saying you need to buy this pedal. I'm not saying even that a pedal is the ultimate solution for you. There's other parts of your tone chain, if you want to call it that can help. I use really heavy strings. This is a Telecaster. I've got 12s on it. On my Gibson guitars, I play an ES335 that has 13s on it. That's going to help hit the amp with a lot of electrical, I don't know if this is the correct term, I'm not an engineer, but it seems to hit it with a lot of energy. And that also helps the amp sound like it's cranked up a little harder, just by the virtue of the fact that you're sending more signal in the very front end of the chain. But you could also achieve that with a pedal maybe that just is what they call a clean boost, which is not meant to affect your sound, just that it's going to be louder and hit the amp a little bit harder. And then it's not quite the same as turning the amp up, but it does some of the same stuff. So long story, it's too late to say long story short, but long story long, sound good at a reasonable volume. That's the guitar tip of this week. My name is Adam Levy. I really appreciate you watching these and sharing these and subscribe if you like. If you want to see what I'm up to musically and otherwise, you can visit my website, adamlevy.com. If you want to get in touch, you can write to me. Guitar tips at adamlevy.com, or lessons at adamlevy.com, or reasonable volume at adamlevy.com. You can really put whatever you want up front. I'll get your note. Thanks a lot. Stay tuned and take good care.